Okay, looks like we should be live. Welcome everyone, this is On Just Restart, and I am joined by my good friend Brandon. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. Ready to talk?
That is good to hear. So, tonight won't be as long as the stream, mainly because I have some work to do. I plan on doing about 90 minutes. I may be able to extend it to about 2 hours. We'll see. But the basic plan for tonight, as the title may suggest, we're going to be talking about ideas for Super Nintendo World. I went to Disney last Sunday, right? And it just kind of got my brain sort of thinking. I didn't go to Universal this time around. I live in the West. I live in the United States. I live in Florida. So I was in Orlando for the day, and I went there. And next year, we will see Super Nintendo World opened in Orlando. But from what we understand so far, it's just going to be the Mario stuff, which is great. Yeah. And I know some things of it. I haven't been there yet because it's only in Japan. It's kind of hard to go to Japan right now. Just in general, it's hard to go to Japan. But going to Disney, seeing a theme park, thinking about what we could see for a Nintendo park, I got a lot of ideas. I took down some notes. And
to be honest, I didn't know exactly what we were going to talk about today. I knew it was going to be like a Q&A and it was going to be slightly different than usual, and we were going to talk about the park. But I didn't actually start thinking about the ideas till now, and I already have 2 banger ideas.
Okay, great.
So,
great.
I feel like this is going to be a good discussion.
Absolutely. So we're going to be focusing on that. We're going to be talking about different ideas for how they could expand the Super Nintendo World Park, because right now it is just Mario. And it's going to probably take a long time for them to expand to different things. So these different ideas, as lovely and as amazing as they may be, as much sense they may make, keep in mind, it takes a long time to build a theme park. We've been waiting years just to get this Mario section. Who knows how much longer it will take to get all the other things.
Remember, they announced
someday
the plans for this before the Switch came out, guys. Remember that. Keep that in mind.
That is a fantastic point. So it has been a long time, but there's so much potential here. And the potential's staggering, really. And I think what we talk about tonight is just going to be really fun to think about. And it could whet the appetite for someone who will eventually go to Super Nintendo World. That said, we will still be discussing other things as well for a little bit. There are some rumors, there are some things, so we'll be touching on that, but it'll be mostly dependent upon you guys in the chat to bring that up. And that's the basic plan for the evening. So with that all said, let's jump into the chat and see how you guys are doing. If you could let me know how everything is looking and sounding, I would very much appreciate that. And yeah, let's just get the ball rolling here. So I see Super Chris was here early. Thank you, buddy, for modding. Really appreciate it. Natsu, you're having some nice trips down memory lane with your 3DS over there. All right. Okay. Nice. Yeah, 3DS was a great system. Robeer 2. Why is it called Super Nintendo World if the only Nintendo thing that it has is Mario World, right? And I think that's kind of be a big sticking point for tonight's discussion. I do have some ideas for Mario, but I have a whole bunch of other ideas that go beyond Mario. And I do believe eventually we'll be beyond just just a Mario section. There's going to be a lot more to it there. I mean, even if it was just Mario, there's so much more they could do. Like, we're really just scratching the surface here. And, you know, I'm sure there's limitations, time, money, space, but really, I mean, they could find ways to work around that eventually. There's just so much potential. So we'll be getting to that tonight, but I want to kind of continue on the chat here. Maybe touch on some other subjects first. Super Chris, just because Mario is Nintendo's central mascot doesn't mean that Super Nintendo World is all about him. Well, so far it is. We do know that they are going to expand to Donkey Kong, though. There is that plan for that. I imagine there's going to be like a... Yeah, there's some Pikmin. They're like kind of little hidden cameos. I imagine there's going to be like a minecart ride for Donkey Kong. Like, that seems like pretty obvious. How much beyond that, we shall see. All right, let's see here. All right, Megaton Menace Atomy. How's Xenoblade 3 going? Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is great. Loving it. I am now in chapter 6. I have slowed down. I'm playing as much as I can. I still find myself busy at times. I was at a wedding this weekend, so I can only play so much. Like, I was literally away from home. But yeah, I've been enjoying the game. I'm in chapter 6. It's going really well. I am slowing down my progression of the story to focus more on the side quest, things of that nature.
Right.
And there's so much to discover. The world continually proves to be larger than you think it actually is, and that's something that's very exciting to me. It's actually quite the opposite compared to Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Xenoblade Chronicles 2, I want the world to be larger than it actually was. So it's a nice little change there. It's not a little change. It's a significant change, and I mean I can go on and on about Xenoblade Chronicles 3, but I have been enjoying it a lot.
I would love to play more of it, but either my siblings put their Switch somewhere I don't know where it is, or they took it with them, because I tried to play it today, and can't find the Switch. But they'll be back tomorrow, so like I'll be able to play it, and then I'll be able to give more thoughts and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of awaiting our spoiler discussion. There will be a spoiler discussion. We got to get to it. I think
when I get my hands on the game, I'm gonna be just like every time I get home from work, just be playing the game when I can.
Yeah, it will happen.
Blow through that. Yeah, gonna be making some progress.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna beat the story before Brandon. It seems like, so I may do something before.
I would hope.
But we'll have a discussion later on too. Like we don't just have to talk about it once. We can go at it from different angles with different opinions for sure. Let's see here. I'm just kind of moving on. Roby, why do you hear boss music? I am not sure. Run. Hey, Jessica. I don't know if you're still here, but hi. Charles Shradell, hello there. Mike Odyssey, hello. Having Hope 5, good evening. J.R. Tolkien added me. You are the man. Brandon, you are all right too.
Thanks.
Hey, that's pretty good. For a second, I thought I misread it, and he said, "You were the man, Brandon." And I was like, man, I thought he meant me.
I read that the same way the first time, and then I was like, oh, dang, you meant Andres.
Yeah, you got those reverse Uno card there, right?
Yeah.
Little Squirt, you just barely started Xenoblade? Okay, the first one. Don't give up on it. I think it has a pretty strong beginning, yeah, for sure. Like, you could spend quite a bit of time sort of exploring the beginning part of Xenoblade 1 before the major plot point happens. So, it kind of depends. So once you get past the major plot point, things are like, oh snap, things are...
Once you get through that tutorial section, which is actually pretty expansive, then you can, you get straight into the story, and it's so good.
Yeah, 100%. So, I may make a video about this very soon, but there is a rumor. We're going to touch on this, and then we're going to jump into the Super Nintendo World expansion concept. There is a rumor coming from Jeff Grubb. He had another one of his podcasts, Last of the Nintendogs, I think it's called. And basically, he said that Metroid Prime Remaster, and Twilight Princess and Wind Waker HD are due to be announced. And I don't want to misquote him, so I encourage you to watch the podcast. And again, I may make a video about this really soon. I'll do my own take on it because I think it's too late to report it as news. I always try to put my own spin on things regardless. But my interpretation was that he was saying that he's expecting to see both Metroid Prime Remake and Twilight Princess and Wind Waker HD announced in a September Nintendo Direct. And I mean, that's kind of like what I've been hoping for.
Can you repeat the name of the person? I was reading chat and didn't quite catch it.
Jeff Grubb.
The name of the person said Jeff Grubb. Okay.
Jeff Grubb, right? And if you go to his YouTube channel, if you search "Last of the Nintendogs," you'll find his podcast. Yeah, Last of the Nintendogs. Yeah, it's right there. It's the most recent one. Yeah. And he talks about it there.
I was gonna say that this is not exactly a bold prediction, but it's Jeff Grubb, so he does have a reputation. I'm saying, like, if it was a random person, this is like such a non-thing. But because it's Jeff Grubb, I feel like it's more news-worthy.
Yeah.
Because like these are predictions we both kind of have. like not 100% confidence, but you like fair confidence for all 3 of those games. So
yeah, we both have been expecting these games for a while. Metroid Prime has been the one.
Last we talked.
Metroid Prime is the one that I have been more confident about, just because, well, I mean, insiders have said that it's coming, so I believe it's coming. Mainly Jeff Grubb, who I totally trust. And with Twilight Princess Wind Waker HD, we didn't have like a solid report out there saying that it was coming this year. It just sort of made logical sense. Like, we know that they exist supposedly, and it makes sense for them to be announced for this year, but we didn't have it actually like a rumor, say from Jeff Grubb or Nate the Hate saying, hey, yeah, we heard it's coming out this year. Now, we still technically haven't heard that based on what was said in the podcast. It was said that it will be announced in a direct, and it'll be coming really soon. I think the implication of that is they don't know what really soon means. But so I think a good perspective to sort of like go into this with is to sort of look at it like Super Mario 3D All-Stars. I could be off on there, but to me the situations feel really similar. So hear me out here. The ways they are similar is that both have been sort of rumored for a while, and there's quite a bit of excitement for them, even though they're old games and there's not that much effort being put into them. The fact that there are these collections of games that people really want on Switch, there's a lot of excitement there. And with that, I think also comes the possibility that Nintendo may be totally aware, and similar to 3D All-Stars, how there was a quick turnaround between announcement and release, 2 weeks, that might be a freaking record. We could see something similar for Twilight Princess and Wind Waker HD. I think they are the kind of games that if Nintendo were to announce them, say, a week or two from now, and come out with them, say, late September or early October, they would perform incredibly well. They'd be fine. Why? Because they are games that came out back on Nintendo GameCube. Popular games for the GameCube in relation to its overall success, which wasn't amazing, but, No. And then when they were brought over to Wii U, again, not an incredibly popular system, but those games were fairly popular for that respective system. By the way, Twilight Princess came out on GameCube, and that was the best-selling Zelda for years, just for the record. So that game's very popular. But both Twilight Princess and Wind Waker HD, they're solid HD remasters on the Wii U. And, from a sort of like, I guess, Wind Waker sort of gained more popularity over the years because of how well it's aged. So there's a lot of discussion on that on the internet, social media, and such. A lot of
controversy when it first came out.
And now it's more of an anti-controversy. It's just universally praised. But basically, both games they're well known. Is the main point here. They had their initial releases back in the early 2000s, and they had their remasters on the Wii U. This would be the third iteration of them. So it's not like they're a brand new game. There's a lot of education to be had. There's not like a big budget here. There's a quick turnaround, very similar to 3D All-Stars in terms of potential, at least, because those are 3 games: Mario 64, Mario Sunshine, and Mario Galaxy. They'd already had multiple releases done. They've all been out for years, generations. They were well known, and they're like relatively minimal effort projects, but they're all being put together as one sort of compilation, which makes it so exciting. So that's why I feel like it's really similar, and I could see them coming out pretty early on if they are being released, announced in a direct. But on the flip side, there's also the potential that they are announced this September. I kind of think that there's a good chance of that, but they come out maybe December or even early next year. And that would be fine for me. Like, I don't mind that, but what I would kind of mind is the implication that if that's coming out, let's say they're coming out January, I find it unlikely that we will see Breath of the Wild 2 coming out March, just a couple weeks, like a month and a half or 2 months removed from the release of those games. If it's like a 4 to 6 month window, that's fine. But a 2 month window, I'm kind of skeptical of that, It
would be weirdly close. At that point, why not just have Breath of the Wild as your, like, big Zelda thing? Like, there's no point in trying to satisfy the Zelda audience if you're giving them the biggest thing possible in 2 months. It's kind of weird. I do agree with that. I don't think that they would push it back to like January. I feel like if those are gonna come out like relatively soon, it's got to be like this month or next month or by the end of the year for at least.
Yeah. So that's kind of like the interesting consideration there, how the release could impact other things. I do think that we will get more news on Breath of the Wild 2 in the next Direct. I'm not really concerned on that. And I also think it's interesting that if we're going to get an announcement for Metroid Prime Remake, we may also get an announcement of some sort regarding Metroid Prime 4. Maybe they'll give us a trailer, maybe they'll give us a teaser, maybe they'll just say, hey, things are going well, don't worry. But since they've done that already with Metroid Dread, I don't know if they're going to continue to do that. They may not mention it at all, but I think, a relatively healthy hope that we might get a little bit of news on both Breath of the Wild 2 and Prime 4 in this Direct.
I feel like 3.5 years after you announced, not even after you restarted, but after you announced a restart on the project, like 3.5 years of development, I feel like you have enough to show a trailer. You might not, it might not be the right time for them, but they definitely could. Like, I feel like the project's in a state where they can show a trailer if they feel like it's the right time.
Yeah. If it's the right time, and there's speculation on that. I put out a video earlier this week while I was away. I was able to edit it even though I was away from home, just talking about that maybe this might be time for Metroid Prime 4 news. I think it could be time, right? We have seen that banner that Retro Studios posted. It seems like they're ramping up as well. So obviously we'll see, but just something to keep your eyes on. But let's get back to the chat real quick here, and then let's move on to our Super Nintendo World expansion ideas, and we'll come back to the chat here and there to go over a few things, and then we'll close out with a little bit more Q&A. All right. So I see I have a super chat here from Dr. Wolfstar for $2. Thank you very much, Dr. Wolfstar. It doesn't look like you said anything. It looks like you just gave me a super chat, which I totally appreciate. So thank you very much. Let's see here. Well, Dr. Wolfstar did say something earlier. Twilight Princess is so overrated because of the art style. It's just a bad game. Bosses are all too easy. There is no challenge, and all the empty fields leave you bored. Well, I like Twilight Princess, but
I feel like Twilight Princess, like,
go on.
Like in the arguments, like Twilight Princess versus Wind Waker, usually Wind Waker's art style, like these days, is like a point towards it over Twilight Princess, because Twilight Princess's art style is not aged nearly as well. So I don't know if I agree that that's even a factor of anything. It's usually a factor against the game for people, because like, especially when the remaster came out, they poured so much more work into like making new textures and stuff, but the art style itself is just so much more realistic. It's just hard to for it to make it age well. So I don't get the argument. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Well, I mean, perspective matters here, right? So you can go at it from a perspective of, before Breath of the Wild, Twilight Princess was the best-selling Zelda game. So, in that right, you could argue it's overrated by sales and also review scores, because it was very highly reviewed. Now, I think, Brian, I feel like the perspective you're speaking from is kind of just what we feel and think of the game, right? And what seems to be sort of generally understood in sort of like our social circles. And what that is that basically Twilight Princess, while not being a terrible Zelda game, there are things that sort of hold it back. And I think actually some of the things that Dr. Wolfstar is saying, well, I mean, I think there's some validity to it. I don't like bad-mouthing Twilight Princess so much, but, I also think that you are raising legitimate points. So with the art style, I actually think it's incredible, but it's more incredible more so for its time. It has not aged as gracefully. Even the HD remaster helps a little bit by cleaning up the textures, but I mean, it's going for like a pseudo-realistic style, and because of that, some things just don't look quite right. And it can be a little distracting or jarring, I guess. Now, it's not actually meant to be ultra-realistic. It's more of like a pseudo-fantastical realism, like pseudo-realism. Yeah. It still has some abstractness to it. But, because of that little bit of a middle ground, there are some of those sort of growing pains, I guess you could call it, or not growing pains, but just it doesn't mature as gracefully. that said, I also kind of agree with you with the bosses. I think Twilight Princess could have been like the best Zelda game ever if it just had better difficulty with the bosses. If there was more to, like, the designs of the bosses were great, the set pieces of them, the atmosphere, all of that, the build up was all wonderful for all the bosses. The biggest issue I had with the bosses was just how they played. Like, it wasn't, I don't even have a problem with necessarily some of the mechanics of the bosses. It's just the execution of them. Like, they were just easy. They were too easy. Once you knew their hook, you can't die. Like, you have to almost intentionally get yourself killed to lose. There is just, it's way too easy. And, you know, I know they offered like the Ganondorf amiibo that made it even harder. You know, you get the blue hearts, you would take more damage or have less life or what have you. And I think there's also a hero mode, so you can kind of compound that difficulty. But if you never get hit, it doesn't matter. And I think that's the main problem with the bosses in Twilight Princess. There's an actual issue of like AI. Yeah, they're too slow and predictable. And what would be interesting if you could just have like maybe some sort of remix of the game where maybe some of their attack animations are sped up or slowed down somewhat to really kind of throw you off and put you in a position where you do get hit. Maybe actually expand some of those hitboxes. Things like that I think they could actually go back and tweak. That wouldn't be too challenging. And it would make them better. Now, will they do that? Almost certainly no. I would love to be wrong on that, but they're not going to do that. With this next iteration of them, if we'll be lucky if they come together as a pack and basically virtually unchanged from their HD remasters.
I would be so happy if they even just like made them 60 FPS. Like, yeah. Even just that, like they did for Skyward Sword, but I feel like they won't because Skyward Sword, I feel like the only reason they did that is because the motion controls. So
now, if it turns out they announce them and they're like, hey, here they are, remastered with new difficulty changes and 60 frames per second, I would be over the roof. But I just don't expect that. I expect them to basically take what they are, make some minor adaptations because of the whole Wii U differences there, like basically manage the Wii U differences, so format it for Switch, and that's it. So, but it's gonna be still two solid games that are still fun to play. Yeah, and it is what it is. But I kind of do think I would like Wind Waker a little bit more than Twilight Princess for some of the reasons you stated. Just I would have said it more nicely, but yes, yeah. Anyway. Okay, I have a few ads here. Let me kind of run through them very quickly. Hello there, T. Elijah Morrison. Let's see. Thank you, Birdman Senpai. I'm glad you appreciate my setup. It's turning out to be more of a longer term setup than I initially realized, but you know, I think it'll work for a few months. I think it'll be fine. T. Elijah Morrison asks, who's your favorite character in Legend of Zelda? I think I don't think I'm allowed to say Link, am I?
Beetle is my favorite character in Legend of Zelda.
Well, that's tough. I haven't really.
Beetle's pretty cool.
And you know, when I think about Legend of Zelda, there's a lot of interesting characters, but I never am like, oh, I don't know. Like, I guess Skull Kid comes to mind.
Ooh, Skull Kid's good.
Yeah, like Skull Kid's pretty cool. Midna is also.
Midna's great.
Top tier, for sure. She has a legitimate character arc. Like, she tells a great story, you know, through her actions in Twilight Princess. My answer is Link, but that's a dumb answer because Link has hardly any personality. But I guess I just enjoy playing as Link. I enjoy being the hero. I enjoy that. Yeah. But in terms of characters outside of Link, Skull Kid and Midna are the first two that come to mind. Princess Zelda too, but she has so many different iterations. I really do like Breath of the Wild Zelda. Like, I mean, I just think that I actually really appreciate that kind of personality. You know, someone who is very more like scientifically minded. Like I like people like that, so I think she has a cool personality there. And also she has very real emotional struggles with her position and her lack of divine powers at first, and how having to deal with that and shouldering the burden of supposedly helping to protect and save Hyrule and not being able to do it. Like there's some pretty cool dynamics there, which I really appreciated. I also like Skyward Sword Zelda because of how expressive she is, and I feel like her expressiveness does a great job in terms of really illustrating like a legitimate romance in Skyward Sword between Link and Zelda, which I like. So there's that. And then actually, around the note of Skyward Sword, Groose.
Ooh, Groose is good.
He's a good dude. He's a good dude. And seemingly not at first, but that's what makes him interesting. Groose is a total dick at first, but he changes, he grows, he matures, and he finds a way to be super helpful against powerful demon gods, and that's incredible, right? So he has his own character arc in Skyward Sword, and I enjoy him as well. So those are a few characters that I like. If I can give you like a specific one, I mean, I go back to Skull Kid, I guess, because with Skull Kid, what's interesting about Skull Kid, he just has this huge sort of breakdown, you know? Like, he clearly suffers from a life of loneliness, and you're sort of led to think maybe there's some sort of connection between Skull Kid in Majora's Mask and the Skull Kid in Ocarina of Time, and how did he become a Skull Kid, and there's a little bit of an isolation there, and you see him crying in the rain, and he joins with the two fairies, and then he gets the mask, like, because he's a bit of a prankster, and then the mask has his own pull, and it's almost like Skull Kid may not even be that interesting of a character on its own. There's like an allure there, but Skull Kid without the mask wouldn't place as like my favorite character. But it's a combination of Skull Kid and that whole setup of obtaining the mask and what it caused, what it created, that becomes almost, I was gonna say infinite, but it becomes exponentially more intriguing, that whole transition and what's kind of behind the mask in terms of, metaphorically speaking, like the darkness behind that, the hatred behind that, what's sort of like drawing him, and this kind of like how it fits with the overall theme of the game, which is about grief and suffering, which that may sound terrible, but like those concepts were really cool, like, and seeing how they were all executed in Majora's Mask, which is really nice. So Majora's Mask just has kind of like a very peculiar sort of personality, and Skull Kid is kind of like the figurehead for it all.
There's a very nice scene at the end of the game, though, after he loses the mask. They like kind of forgive him, and everything's like okay. And then
I mean, it wasn't entirely his fault, right? It was mostly the fault of the mask. So, you know, but I also we could make this a Skull Kid discussion, but I think we should put a pin on that for now and move on to some other things. Charles Riddell said, if I remember, people say that on hard Xenoblade Chronicles bosses are really difficult. I can't confirm that is absolutely the case. Hard mode is significantly harder against the bosses. You may be like 5 levels higher and you're still going to get whooped.
Dang.
Yeah.
Honestly, I just play every game on normal now.
I went back to normal.
Get through the game.
What I do, I went back to normal, but I try and fight bosses that are higher, like a much higher level than me, and that offers an interesting challenge. Now, one thing I'll say, when I did some of the hard mode bosses, I didn't have like the ultimate like team layout, and I still don't, but I can do more. But because the game encourages you to sort of try different classes, I'm never using like my favorite class for any of my characters, and I'm kind of starting from scratch, so they're never like really maxed up to their potential even at that point in the game for me. So I'm never using my most ideal setup. If I were to use my most ideal setup, or up there for at least what I think from where I'm at in the game, and then go to hard mode, it might be a little bit of a different story. But yes, hard mode is challenging. To finish the question quickly. Okay, so one more ad and then we're moving on. Megaton Manus, I've always found Zelda to be boring, so I was wondering what about it you find so captivating? Like the character or the game? Was this in relation to the other question from earlier? I'm not sure. Zelda, I feel like I spoke well for both Breath of the Wild Zelda and Skyward Sword Zelda as a series. I mean, There's tons of adventure. It's a beautiful, fantastical world. It's incredibly designed. The action is very well polished. There's a lot of cool combat there. You have the whole sort of archetype of hero, knight, saving princess, which is kind of cool, but done in its own unique way with tons of surrounding characters that have very unique, quirky personalities. It's a beautiful escape. The music is entrancing.
The music is just the best.
Yeah, and there really is no other game in series in the entire industry that comes close to the uniqueness and execution of the puzzles and dungeons. There is no other game that comes close, and it's not really a debate or a discussion at all.
It's just facts.
It's just facts.
Zelda's all about exploration, adventure, and puzzles for me. Those are the main 3 pillars of the game.
Yeah. So there's so much about it that I do love. There really is nothing that I don't like.
The best in business in all 3.
Yeah. But let's move on to the main subject for the evening, and that is expansions for Nintendo World. Brandon, I know you have a couple, so we could go for yours, but I also know I have a long list for mine. So I feel like I probably, unless you have a few more, I feel like I probably should do some of mine. You know what? Well, what do you want to do?
I think, I feel like...
Because I feel like some of my ideas might
have similar ideas.
Right. So you do yours first, because I have so many.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'll just go with the first idea that came to my head, which is Star Fox. I'm just thinking, like, I really like roller coasters, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like Star Fox makes a lot of sense for roller coasters, and it can even be not just a roller coaster, but obviously a lot of these, like, Universal likes to have like games and like a game element to it, and I feel like Nintendo likes that as well.
Yeah.
And Star Fox is just so easy for that, because as you're going around on the roller coaster, you can just have like AR goggles on and just have like little turrets or something that you can like aim and just shoot different like
We're so much on the
things.
same page.
And it's just a perfect, easy idea that I feel like also pulls off of concepts that are already existent in rides. So it's not like something you would have to go crazy. Because some of my other ideas, the technology exists, but it might be harder to execute. But this one, I feel like it's the first idea that came to my head. I feel like it's the easiest to execute, and it just makes the most sense.
Yeah. I honestly agree with you. I just want to kind of expand on it. It's pretty much what I had in mind. So how many of you are familiar with Space Mountain? If you don't know what Space Mountain is, I'll explain. It's a ride in Disney World. I don't know if it's still there. I'm assuming it is. It's a historic ride, but basically the ride's like, it's inside of a building. It's not an outside roller coaster. Right. It's an inside roller coaster. And I think this would be needed for Star Fox, because I'm totally with you on it being, I mean, there's 2 different ways they could go about it. One, they could just make it like a Space Mountain roller coaster where it's inside a giant building, and this giant building, let's say how they were to construct it, maybe they design Corneria and they just make it look like a giant building, but it's a whole slew of skyscrapers, right? But maybe there's like a dome in the middle or something like that. You walk into and that leads to the ride. So it'd be super cool. And in there, you know, there are gonna be 4 R-wings that you can pick one. You go into one of them. Maybe it might be a party per R-wing, right? But there'd be 4 R-wings flying around in tandem, so maybe like 16 people at a time, then 4 people per R-wing, so it'd be bigger. And you might be there to assist one of the different members: Star Fox, Peppy, Falco, Slippy.
Right.
And what you do, to your point, Brandon, is you shoot. So they would have like some sort of VR augmented reality element in there where you are shooting, and you do obtain a high score. So you are ranking up your own points as you shoot around, but it is a legitimate coaster where you're flying around, and since it's inside a building, they can actually construct a beautiful space-like environment, since there's already advisors to have some sort of augmented reality there, but they could have like projections with different like explosions and ships crash. There's so much they could do, and that would be amazing. Now, so it could be a roller coaster, but they also can make it like a simulated coaster. So there are rides where basically you'll be put into, it would still be probably an R-wing. You would literally sit down in an R-wing. It would look and feel like an R-wing, but when you're inside of it, they would simply simulate the movement, and you would see like, screens, right? So, and that way you can be flying through space, and it'll be lots of crazy stuff there, but it wouldn't be an actual physical roller coaster. But sometimes those rides can still feel amazing. One ride I did that was kind of like that was actually the Avatar ride in the Pandora section of Animal Kingdom. And the way that works, you sit on kind of like a bike-like device. There's a giant screen in front of you. You know, it's almost like, and there's like several like stories of people seated on these bikes. But you see a giant screen in front of you. You put on a little bit of a visor to sort of enhance like a 3D effect. I wouldn't anticipate a 3D effect per se for Star Fox, but like an AR effect with a visor. And the bike, it moves, you know, you see it simulates movement with the screen. You feel air and shaking and things like that. And they can do that with a simulated coaster on an R-Wing like that. They can do that. So either method could work. I actually almost wonder if maybe it might be better to do the simulated one, just because they might be able to do more visually with actual like screens, as opposed to building like an actual physical environment and having a coaster roll through it. You know what I mean? Right. Both could work, and it would depend how they want to do it. But that's kind of how I envision a Star Fox ride.
I think I would definitely prefer it to be an actual coaster, but to save space, I could see that. That is the simulated thing does kind of work for that more than. I have another idea where I'm kind of thinking to save space they would just do a simulator, but I don't think it'd be as fun. Do you want me to talk about that idea?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So I think Splatoon's big, right? Splatoon 3 is coming out. Splatoon demo just came out.
Oh, okay.
So why not go to Splatoon? But you know, doing an AR thing because I think it'd be like paintball, right? Where you'd be in a room and you'd be running around with each other, but you'd have AR goggles so you'd see the ink splattering everywhere. You'd need some kind of because you're moving around so much, you'd need very good tracking. So I think you'd need a lot of like LiDAR sensors around the room, but I don't think the technology is like the technology exists. I'm just not sure how like what's the word, convenient it is to use, I guess, or practical. That's the word. I'm not sure how practical it is, but assuming it is, like, that would be so much cooler than my second idea is if they need to save space or if they can't get that to work, you could just do fully VR where everybody's just moving around. They have these things where for VR where you can actually like run in place and it moves kind of like a treadmill. So they could do something like that where you're actually still running around to move, but you're not actually like moving in a space. But I feel like that'd be more boring way to save space than something like the Star Fox ride, which you actually have like, because I've been on rides where they're like 3D roller coasters where the seat actually like moves and stuff, and those feel pretty good because the hydraulics actually like move the seat a lot. But just running around like in Splatoon and just VR, I think be cooler with the AR thing and in like an actual room.
Yeah, the way I kind of see it would be maybe kind of like an improved version of laser tag, where, you know, and they could do a thing where it's people competing against each other, but maybe another idea could be maybe more like emulating Salmon Run, where you have a party of people and their goal is to defend the island. And that way you're not fighting other players or riders, you're fighting virtual salmonids or mammalians, whatever they choose a threat to be. And the idea is simply to sort of protect in that way, and you're shooting ink at them. Now,
that could work too. Yeah.
The tricky part with this is that how do you do this and also have it feel like Splatoon? Like, I feel like they want to represent Splatoon well, and I think maybe
you can't go squid form.
You can't go squid form. So
what if you crouch and you still go squid form, but you just can't swim?
I have a couple ideas. What if there are two different Splatoon rides? What if Splatoon's big enough to get two different rides? And and actually they could have it goes beyond just the rides, right? It's also about the environments. And I think Splatoon could be big enough that it gets its own environment. So remember how I mentioned Corneria, Maybe they don't even do
Right.
Corneria because Star Fox is smaller. Maybe there's like a section of the park that's more like the space area, right? So there you would see F-Zero, Star Fox, Metroid, right? And it would be kind of like a futuristic Nintendo city, you know?
Right.
And that's kind of how they sort of section those off, and we'll come back to that later. But maybe Splatoon gets its own section, and it's like an Inkopolis where you can actually explore there, right? And you actually, like, you know how they have the
clothing.
Right, exactly. There can actually be a merch store. Maybe there could be 2 merch stores. And you know how they would have like, they could be a Splatoon restaurant that's like seafood related. They can do
be
that.
More snacks. Like they could have like a food truck because they have like the food truck in the second game. I don't know if they have that in the third game.
And what's another cool thing? They can also have concerts. The Inkopolis could have a they can have a Splatfest concert. They can have the snack bars. They can have the merch shops. And none of those are rides. That's just part of the Inkopolis experience at Nintendo World. And then we'll have 2 rides. One ride
will be in the center building where you like usually walk up to get into the lobby.
One will be Salmon Run that you move to the left, or however they choose to do it, and the other one will be like the Turf War, right? Except they can't quite. I don't think they can quite do turf. Well, it would be interesting if they could come up with a way.
Could. I mean, if it's just like laser tag, but the thing, if you all have everybody hooked up to a system that like connects to your headsets, right? And you're just tracking everybody. You can use LiDAR cameras.
I got it.
That actually can tell 3D space.
I got it.
So it knows, and you just play Splatoon. Everybody, you just ink win, and if you get hit, you die. You gotta go walk back to the base to respawn.
This is what I think. How you do it. Because ultimately, it does have to be a game. And similar to the first section of Super Nintendo World, if you guys don't know how Super Nintendo World works, I haven't been there, but I've seen enough about it to know. You get watches, and with the watches, you can actually go around Super Nintendo World, and you bop it against different things. There's like a NFC technology, and it registers your connection, and you can update yourself. You can obtain actual items within the world, and that can unlock other sections of the world to explore, and you can acquire things in that way. They can maintain the system throughout the entire park, and it does different things. So maybe that's how it works for the Mario area. But for the Splatoon area, it's all about winning the Splatfest. When you enter Inkopolis, you pick a side, to your point, Brandon. And maybe they have a Splatfest like every 3 hours or so, right? That way, you don't have to be there the whole day, but there can be multiple Splatfests so everyone has the opportunity to have the whole experience, you know? Maybe it's not even, maybe it can even be every hour. If it's all mechanical, it doesn't have to be, maybe 3 hours.
I think it would have to be pretty short, because like, to get the whole experience, you need to stay the whole time, right?
Yeah.
And you're gonna stay at just the Splatoon section for 3 hours.
Maybe 90 minutes then.
Yeah, maybe an hour to 90 minutes.
Right. I mean, you don't have to be there the whole time, but like, there's so much they could do. They could even have like, all right. In the different little things going on in Inkopolis, you pick a side. You do something to support your side, right? Right. So at the merch shop, there's probably could be a little mini game there. You click, and that's kind of your score will go towards the Splatfest, right? You're the side you choose. Maybe you stop by the snack shop, same thing. They could even have you know how like they have the show with the idols, like the newscast show. Yeah, that could maybe be a studio. Maybe you walk through a studio and you do something there. Right, with when you
just have paid actors there that actually wave back at you like in the game. If you look at them,
it would be interesting to have paid actors, but I don't know if you. Well, I mean,
there's animatronics.
Yeah, they could do animatronics, and that might be more realistic. So that might make more sense, Or it could all be digital.
Yeah, the paid actors can be in suits, but
it could also be all digital. It could be like a 3D screen.
Yeah, Oh, like those one they have in.
And
where is it? Tokyo? No, it's not Tokyo. It's like China. I don't know. Somewhere.
Like maybe Inkopolis has like a giant screen where they show up every once in a while and they have their own talk show. But occasionally maybe they do have dressed up people come out and you can interact with them. Like they could probably do a little bit of both, right? But there's different potentials there.
For the Mario parks, I'm sure.
Yeah, they could totally. Yeah, they could do that, and going back to the rides, right? So we've kind of set up like a little bit of a theme park here. There's different things going on. And at every little thing, there's like some sort of little mini game where you can bop your watch and pick and do something to support your side for the Splatfest. And as you approach maybe the final 30 minutes, that's when the lighting changes. It goes more into like the Splatfest mode. You see the concert come out. That would all be amazing, right? But then the two rides, one would be maybe Salmon Run. And it'd be kind of like what we expressed, so it's like sort of like a VR sort of thing where you defend by shooting ink. And you basically it's just a shooter at that stage. Yeah. But another ride you could do, it could actually be a coaster with some water. And it's just about you're just basically the coaster are little squids or octolings or inklings, and you just fly around as the inkling or octoling. There you go. That's it.
I mean, it could work. I don't know. I feel like...
And they could actually have situations where they show you flying through like ink walls and stuff. Maybe it could actually be like... It's entirely sealed, so there'd be points where you go in ink. So maybe you don't get wet, but there is like colored water to simulate swimming through ink. Pretty cool, right? Yeah, like you basically like the rides are like little... You would be inside a squid. They would be like a little submarine coaster that goes through things.
That could be interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And it might just be normal water. Maybe the screens themselves will make it look like it's yellow or purple ink or whatever. Like that changes. Like it's a little, like almost like a little bit of an AR visor.
It's like, it's just keyed out green. So it's just
And they could even position it where it's almost like an aquarium at the same time, too. So it could be a bit of an aquarium. Obviously, the roller coaster wouldn't dive into where there's an actual sea animal, but there could be like an invisible wall, like a transparent wall where it's actually truly sectioned off, so the animals are safe. I like
this idea a lot
but
more.
You could,
the aquarium part. You
could go through it and you would get that experience. And then leading up to the ride, right? Because these rides will take long. There has to be like a build up there, right? There has to be a structure you go through and explore and see things. They're that ride. It could be a legitimate aquarium, but make it Splatoon themed, There you go.
Yeah. Octopus and squids.
Right, and then for the salmon ride, you could see like they can kind of expand upon the idea of the bear statue.
Just squids and octopus, There's a lot of like NPCs and stuff that are other.
And when you really think about it, there's so much lore they can go into with Splatoon. Like you think about all the Splatoon 1, 2, and then 3, and then you think about like the history. Like they could have so many different hallways and rooms that have like blueprints or pieces of art or artifacts of ancient history, sort of detailing what has transpired throughout the Splatoon story. So there's so much material there. They could do a really well fleshed out like Splatoon section of the park. Like everything I think we've talked about would be pretty much an equivalent to what they've done with Mario so far.
The only thing I'm like curious about is what design they would go for Inkopolis, right? Because obviously like the hub is different in each game. I don't know if they always call it Inkopolis. I don't know if Inkopolis is like specifically for Splatoon.
Maybe it becomes its own version. By the way, I got one other idea. And this may go more towards what you were hoping for. What if, when you do the mini games, it actually there's a lot of walls that are like virtual walls, like digital like TV walls or something. And when you pick your side, you actually splat that wall. So people be doing different little things throughout the city, and it's almost like the city itself is a Splatfest. And there's a battle for turf.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah. So there's some cool things they could do with it. So I mean, I think that kind of covers my ideas for Splatoon. I don't know if there's anything you have to add.
No, I think we covered Splatoon. What else? What other good big franchises do we need to cover?
Got a lot. Is there any other ideas that you had noted down that you want to cover before I go into my list?
See, the problem is I didn't note down any of these. I just thought I remember them. I think I had a third one, but I don't even remember if I did. So.
Well, I mean, I'm glad we started with yours because I mean, basically yours were things I kind of touched on already. So we explored my ideas with it too. So let's go ahead and talk about some ideas I have to expand on the Mario section. That's right, we're expanding the Mario section. So, a Mario Galaxy ride. Imagine a ride where you are on one of the airships that Koopa Jr., Bowser Jr., I should say, uses. So you actually ride along Bowser Jr., and the story is that Bowser Jr. has hired new minions to help him stop the evil bad Mario. And so you see everything from his perspective, right? And it's kind of like the line leading up to the ride is actually like treated as an enlistment process. So you'll see like Goombas and Koopas fail or make it. They'll be like saluting, being put in lines, and you'll go through that process, and you will make it all the way through the enlistment process. You will make it in. You will go through the tryouts, and you'll be a part of his crew, and you'll be following. You'll be alongside Bowser Jr. on this airship throughout the ride, but the ride is actually chasing Mario as he races through a galaxy, say Good Egg Galaxy. And you see the little planetoids, the star bits, you're flying through this beautiful space area, and that's how they handle it. Now, would it be a literal roller coaster, or would it be more of like a VR sort of ride that simulates coaster-like movement? I think
for the kind of experience you're talking about, it seems like a little bit longer. Because it seems like it have multiple parts.
Well,
right?
What I just talked about, like the line, would be the line section, right? You assume you're gonna be there for a little while.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but the actual ride would be inside the air. You'll be sitting on the airship with Bowser Jr. chasing Mario throughout a galaxy.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I think it would have to be like an inside ride. It doesn't necessarily have to be all super fast.
Yeah.
But there would be some sections where they would go a little fast. And so I guess it would be like a little bit of a mini coaster, but there'd be a lot of cool things. Like it'd be going like flying through planets and things like that.
If you're on an airship, they need to keep you like feel relatively level for that to make sense. For the most part, unless you're going up or down. I don't know. I feel like
maybe what they could do is you board the airship acting as if you're one of Bowser Jr.'s minions, but like, and then right before, say like Rosalina shows up and says, "Hey, look, I need you guys to help Mario, right? So I need you guys to help me hijack Bowser Jr.'s cannons as you're going through the space environment, using the cannon to shoot down, say like different bosses, right? Like they have like the big dragon boss or the giant like metal gargantuan thing that Mario fought on one of the planets. Like they do stuff like that, and that's where you're controlling cannons as you're flying around, and you're also collecting star bits.
It doesn't have to be a big inside ride. I feel like the kind of experience thing, the simulation might work better, because that's such a
I think so.
You'd need like
thinking more on it. Yeah,
whole galaxy. There's a lot of empty space that you would need to have. You're on a big airship, so you need to make it feel like a big airship. I feel like maybe it'd be better if you were on something smaller. Maybe like Bowser Jr.'s little, like a bigger version of Bowser's
like the
flying thing.
Yeah, we don't see that in space, but it doesn't have to be space. Does not have to be space. That's an idea. Maybe. I think the important thing is there's got to be like the interaction, right? Like the big concept here is that everything's kind of like a game throughout Super Nintendo, so there's got to be some level of interaction. So something like that for sure. But I want to move on because we only have so much time. There's a lot of more things I want to kind of talk about here. So another idea I have is a haunted mansion section with Luigi.
Ooh. Okay.
So some sort of haunted mansion. It would maybe think of something to the effect of kind of like the haunted hotel in the Tower of Terror. Maybe something like that, where there's this huge aesthetic that you kind of go through and explore. But in terms of the actual attraction itself, like there's going to be a line, right? So again, you're in a hotel sort of leading up, and maybe the idea is you're working with Professor Egad to help Luigi, right? Professor Egad's sort of like gearing you up to go and help. And I think what ultimately will amount to I think I've tried to sort of envision how this works, and I think what it ultimately will have to be is that you will have to be on some sort of like device, right? Because I don't think you could hand people actual like vacuum cleaners and have them walk through the mansion. You know, I'd love that, but I don't think that'll work. It won't be practical. So what probably makes more sense is that it's an actual sort of like maybe he puts you into some sort of protective device like that you can ride through, you know, and it rides through the mansion, and the idea is to help find Mario or Luigi, right? Help Luigi basically. So you see Luigi throughout the ride, but the idea is to help save Mario, right? Just like the original Luigi's Mansion. And so, but you'll be protected, but you can get hit by ghosts, but you know, you have some level of protection, and you can go around sucking up these ghosts. So you'll be in a ride, maybe it's 4-person per ride, and you'll be using these little turrets that are vacuum cleaners. So it'll be a mostly sort of like VR/AR sort of ride, right? So you'll be going through these pre-constructed rooms that will be decorated like an actual legitimate mansion, but there'll also be some elements of there where there'll be holograms or augmented reality ghosts, and you're shooting that, and it's all sort of, the rooms are highly animated, so it's set up so where like if you suck the drapes will respond, right? Or if there are books, if you suck the books will come down. Like they have these rooms actually designed to respond to where you aim with the vacuum cleaner, and then the actual ride you're in, there's like a screen on top that provides the augmented reality effect of when you see the ghosts and you try and suck them. And there's multiple rooms like this where you're kind of going through. These rides are complex. I
kind of like the idea of Luigi's Mansion not even having a ride and just being like a spooky mansion you rock through that tries to jump scare you constantly with the animatronics and stuff. I think that would honestly be fun. Like, I feel like a lot of our rides end up being pretty similar, not in terms of like aesthetic or what's happening, but like in terms of just what you're actually doing. Like my Star Fox ride was just shooting
stuff
as you go through. So is Luigi's Mansion.
Yeah.
So were a couple of other ideas. I think it'd be cool if it was just like really cool animatronics and just a Luigi's Mansion that you could walk around in, and there was some scary stuff that happened and add like some like fog effects and cool stuff.
You know what they could do? What if there was a system in place where you tell Luigi what to do? So maybe it's kind of like almost like an escape room, a series of escape rooms where you're going through.
You can't say that because that's part of my next idea for a completely different series.
I know. You said you had more ideas though.
Well, I said I had a third one I couldn't remember.
You said you might have. You see, it was a big maybe there. Yeah.
Well, the maybe ended up being yes.
So, kind of like an escape room, but not quite, because I want to save the escape room aesthetic for another thing. To your point, I agree with you on that. But somewhat, where you're exploring a haunted mansion, but there will be points where you may be stuck in a room and Luigi will be in the room with you, and you kind of need to tell him where to go, you know? And you might choose certain parts of the room, and he's like, oh, okay, maybe you'll try like getting a vacuum, and then, you know, a ghost will pop out, and there you go. And that's kind of the experience. Like, it'll be a very light escape room experience. It'll be more of, to your point, kind of exploring like this beautifully animated sort of like haunted mansion. And maybe it could even be designed in a way where, you know what, I'm kind of like revising as I go. Maybe it's more about, it'll be more open, and the idea is to find hints. So let's revise it. It's not an escape room.
Okay.
It's a room where it's an interactive haunted mansion. Okay.
Oh, I like this.
So basically, it's a mansion that you can explore at your leisure, at your own pace. But the idea is to help find certain Nintendo characters that may be missing. And you can find clues throughout the mansion, and you can interact with the mansion. Maybe you could pull out a book, or maybe you could, like, you know, you could touch a table or something, and a ghost may come out, and you may get a coin, you may get a hint, and you update that with your little watch. And you can find clues throughout, and if you obtain enough clues, it will give you a key that will let you go to the top floor where you'll ultimately see like a final fight with Luigi and King Boo or something.
Yeah, that is cool. Yeah, I mean, they could do a ton of stuff with the watch actually in this scenario, because you can just use it to like find all kinds of like hidden things throughout the mansion, and yeah, maybe you could find like a key that leads to a special room that has something extra for you to find. I do like the idea, like, because it's not a non-escape room, but there's still things to go and explore.
Yeah, we'll save the escape room idea, but like just kind of like interacting with the mansion, a haunted mansion, exploring it in an open way, which would be very unique, right? It would be different than what we normally see from things like that. So I want to take a quick break from us, just kind of checking the chat real quick here. Guys, if you could please leave a like, super helpful with this stream. It'll get more people out there to sort of, it'll get the stream out there so others will see it. So leaving a like, super appreciated, guys. If you do that, would really help out. But just checking the chat here, let's see. T. Elijah, who will be in Mario Strikers Battle League? Bowser Jr., Diddy Kong, or Hammer, Koopa Troopa, or King K. Rool, or Pauline? No idea. How about all of them?
Pauline makes a lot of sense. She's been into everything.
Yeah, so. Pauline has a good chance. King K. Rool seems, and I don't know. I don't know. It would be very cool. It'd be very, very cool. Let's see here. Having Hope 5, Mario Galaxy Ride sounds interesting, right? Ooh, Alex, Rosalina telling her story to the public and everyone cries. So something, going back to the Galaxy Ride, like what if there's a story time part where you see Rosalina talking? That would be interesting. Of course, my idea is that Bowser Jr. to be enlisting you, but it could be one or the other, right? It doesn't have to be exactly what I said. That's another cool little idea they could do. And maybe it doesn't have to be all in one ride. It could be separate things. So there's something else there. But
could it even be something like collecting star bits to feed a hungry Luma?
Yeah.
So you're going around, you're flying around a galaxy, and your job is to point some kind of maybe Wii remote-like device and collect star bits.
Ooh.
And the more star bits you get, the bigger your hungry Luma gets at the end. And
so maybe what it could be, right? So they make a line like an interactive game, right? So at the beginning, it is Rosalina, right, telling story time, and that's sort of like an inciting incident to what your objective is, because there's a sick Luma and you have to collect star bits to help it heal. So then Rosalina asks for your help, and you jump through a warp pipe, and this takes you into the enlistment process for Bowser Jr., who's trying to take down evil Mario, right? So you go through this process, which takes you on the airship, and you're flying through collecting star bits. Bowser Jr. thinks you're helping him, but you're actually helping Rosalina, and Mario's just kind of flying around through space, and you're seeing all this cool dramatic stuff. Ultimately, at the end, so you get enough star bits to help the sick Luma.
Could work.
Yeah, but let's move on here. So I think adding some Mario Galaxy elements, adding a Luigi's Mansion element, I think that would be a nice way to really bolster up the Mario Park. But I don't think you need to add. You could add more stuff. You don't have to. But there is another concept that came to mind that I think might be really cool, and that would be to do something related to Mario Party.
Ooh.
Except, I thought about it for a little while. I was like, oh, how cool would it be if they could make like a game board, like a real life game board? I thought about that, and I thought that probably wouldn't be practical.
Real life mini games.
How would that work though? And so I thought about this. What if they were to make it more like a game show, where you go into the Mario Party section, right? And you'll maybe see like some maps designed. You can see the maps like alluded to, and you're kind of progressing through the line. But when you get there, it's actually a game show, and there's 4 people standing, right? And they each have like a couple like big buttons that they can press, maybe a D-pad. So you do play mini games, and each one's kind of like picking their options, like, and they're standing on this platform, and it's like a giant virtual screen where the Mario Party mini games are sort of held. Maybe there's like 4 or 5, right? So they're all quick. So it ends up being like maybe a 10 to 15 minute experience, but you see like a virtual audience, and that's what you do. You compete for 4 to 5 rounds, and you do these quick mini games in succession. And there you go.
You know what they could do? I just thought of they could just. This might annoy Mario Party fans because this is the dark times of Mario Party, guys. Mario Party 9 and 10, horrible games, but they had one good mode that was kind of decent and would work perfectly for this, and that's where you're all working together in one car to get to the end of the level. And that's the entire point. I think you're racing Bowser in that mini game, or that not mini game, but that mode. So essentially, you would all work together to roll enough and do little mini games at certain points all together, and you just have to get to the end before Bowser catches up to you. And I feel like even though, it didn't work amazingly for Mario Party itself, that could be really good for a ride.
Yeah, maybe. Thinking on it, there are, in the actual Mario Park, there are like different random mini games. Like if you can click on like a question block and you'll see like coins on a wall you can kind of collect, right? Like there's different little things like that. So I mean, the idea of like having mini games, just kind of like, they could come up with a lot of different mini games, interactive mini games, and they could all register with the watch. So there's definitely a lot of potential there, and I feel like they could maybe someday squeeze that in. But in the interest of time, I want to move on beyond the Mario stuff. I know there's a lot there, like Mario Galaxy, Mario Party, Luigi's Mansion. But let's move on
Mario
here.
Kart.
There's already Mario Kart rides, so they're good there.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Could they add another Mario? They could add like a whole bunch of Mario Kart stuff, but there's only so much. There's other game series that they should cover, and one that I think they absolutely need to cover eventually is The Legend of Zelda.
Yes.
So remember how earlier we talked about how they could have like it be like an Inkopolis section. There'll still be the Mushroom Kingdom section. And there may be like sort of like a space city section that covers a few of the smaller Nintendo franchises that are related to the future. Right. But maybe there could also be like a fantasy medieval section, right? And a lot of this will be Hyrule, but maybe there'll be a couple little things that branch off that, like maybe like Kid Icarus, for example, and Xenoblade, right? They could maybe have their own like side pieces to the park, and we'll get to those in a little bit in terms of how that'll make sense. But ultimately, the park will be designed like a mini Hyrule. At first, I thought maybe Castle Town or Kakariko Village, but I don't know.
I feel like Castle Town is plenty big enough to have everything you need.
I guess I'm just trying to think about in terms of having variety. Like you want to have like a Lake Hylia, right? Maybe you want to have some Hyrule Fields. Maybe you want to show Death Mountain. You know what I mean? You don't just want it to be like, I like this idea because basically, what if like they design like a mini Hyrule that has these different things? There is a Hyrule Castle, there's a Temple of Time, there's a Death Mountain, a Lake Hylia, there's a little bit of a desert, a few dungeons, and the entire park is a there's a roller coaster that goes through the entire park. And this park, the roller coaster will actually be one of the divine dragons, Nadra, Dinral, and Feroth. Maybe there could be all three, because that way they could have each one, right? And then it's a giant roller coaster that just rolls through all of Hyrule. And
you need a lot of space for this park.
Yeah,
a lot of space.
Yeah, well, it's Legend of Zelda, buddy. You got to do something. And so the goal in this area is to collect the Triforce. You can collect the different shards of the Triforce. So maybe on the flying through Hyrule roller coaster, you have like a button that could be to when you see it, and you can press the button to sort of respond to when you see a Triforce to collect it. But the idea ultimately is you're just kind of flying through Hyrule with an actual, like, it'll be like one of the few actual roller coasters in this park, right? Like, because think about it, like, we don't have any like legitimate roller coasters. This is an opportunity to have a legitimate roller coaster. And it'll be different. It'll be somewhat comparable to Dueling Dragons from Universal, except better because it would be throughout the entire park, and it'll be an actually designed Hyrule. And it doesn't always have to be super intense. There'll be moments, but because it's like the dragons, they could be sort of flying through. And that's one possibility. Another thing, they could do like a Loftwing roller coaster if they want to do that instead. Like, so there's a few different options there. Also, actually, on that note, if they say they do the dragon roller coaster, maybe there is still a Loftwing ride. The Loftwing ride isn't so much a ride as it is you can use this to go to another side of the park. You know how like some theme parks will have like gliders or like zip lines that go from one side of the park to the other? They could use the Loftwings to maybe do that. Yeah, well, there you go. Cool. Yeah, so they could do something like that. I've already kind of like started this Zelda idea, but I know you had some ideas too. So before I take them away, go ahead, share them.
My Zelda idea is 100%. They replicate a dungeon and it's an escape room. Like dungeons and escape 100%. Room. It's so obvious. It's just perfect for Zelda. There's so much that they could do. And it's just pure puzzles, baby. Like, I don't even think they need to have like a mini boss or bosses or enemies or anything like that. Like, they can if they want to figure out a way to incorporate that. But honestly, like, just an escape room that's just Zelda themed, that looks like a dungeon, and you go through the different rooms and solve puzzles to get through the dungeon.
Oh, I think there could totally be a boss. So think of it like this.
I think there could be a boss.
Think you're exploring a dungeon, right? Let's say it's a Temple of Time. I feel like it's probably the best one to do. Okay. I'm just saying, like, it's the most generalized one, because you could pick another random dungeon, but then people will be like, oh, what about the fire? If you pick the forest dungeon, right, they're gonna be like, what about the water temple, or like, the fire temple? Like, you know what I mean?
Right. That's why
I feel like if you just do the Temple of Time, it can be a style of dungeon that actually can bring in elements from all the dungeons. Or maybe
they don't even have to keep the escape room exactly the same always. They can set it up in a way to where they can change the escape room. Like, imagine if they had seasons, like this part of the year, it's the grass temple, but maybe in 3 or 4 months it might be the water temple now, completely a different escape room. Because imagine you want people to come back, and they don't even have to do that every couple months. It could be like every couple years they change it or something. But they could set up in a way that they could change it eventually, because you want people to come back to this, right? And if there's an escape room that's always the same, once you've done it, you don't really need to do it again, right? But if they change it every once in a while, that would be awesome.
It'd be super cool. I'm just kind of thinking more on this. So I'm with you there. I think it would be a dungeon. Maybe to your point, they changed it around, but there will be a dungeon and there will be a boss fight at the end, and it'd be put into a room where they'll use like special effects, like big fans and like sprinklers or whatever, and shaking environments and like heaters to make you feel like there's some sort of significant presence there, and through some type of augmented reality or a screen, or maybe it's true, just straight up animatronics. They have a boss and it's super threatening, but you also have Link fighting it, but you need to help Link. And there's certain elements in the room that you can help to maybe to stop this boss, right? Let's come up with an example. Maybe Link is fighting Goma, some giant Goma, and it's a fire. What would be interesting? Watch it be a temple. Maybe if they don't do seasons, which is an interesting idea, don't get me wrong. I think maybe that would be a good way to go about it. Maybe they change it out over time, regardless. But maybe the dungeon isn't straight up a forest temple or a fire temple. What if it's like a blend of forest, fire, and water? So it's like a fusion temple or something. So there's forest elements, there's fire elements, and water elements, and they use this to play into the puzzles, right? Like maybe there's a pipe system you could take advantage of that could call out a flushing of water, or maybe there's forest and you can unlock like a lava channel that could burn the forest, right? And maybe some of these mechanics you could take advantage of in an escape room while there's a giant boss that Link is fighting at the very end that will feel time sensitive. Maybe it can. Maybe it will be time sensitive. If you fail, well, you'll have to try again. I
imagine they would do a separate time for the main part of the dungeon and the boss, but they could do this at one time. Just like, you gotta get through it. But I feel like I would want, I don't know, depends, because if I feel like if I'm trying to get through like the escape room, and then I get through the escape room, and then like I run out of time on the boss, that'd be a little annoying, because I solved the puzzle that you're giving me time for. But they could definitely have another time limit for the boss as well, or just you have to help Link. Like, say, like, if you miss enough of these, like, like, maybe they could have, like, quick time events that you need to do to use, like, different things in your environment. Like, there could be a bow, and you gotta hit Goma in the eye so that Link can do a finishing strike. And if you don't hit the time, well, Link gets hurt, and he only has a certain amount of health, and you gotta help Link. So
maybe the thing is, you'll probably succeed, because what if everyone can grab a bow, and through like AR, everyone can shoot an arrow to support Link at Goma's eye? That would be really cool, actually.
Yeah,
that's a very interesting idea. Yeah, man, that'd be super cool. Maybe there could be like chests like around the room. You could open the chest, you pull out a bow. It's like maybe like somehow like tethered to the chest, so you can't take it with you. You can kind of like grab it, and you can use it to shoot arrows. That would be super cool. That's a really interesting idea. I don't. So there's a lot of potential there, but I think ultimately the idea is it's an escape room with some augmented reality and VR elements. Which is going to basically it dominates the whole entire concept of the park. Like, they already have a lot of that stuff in the Mario section.
I think that already exists just for the boss. I want the main part, like the main dungeon, all practical
exploring
effects.
Like actual like weird like, or dungeon like rooms, like very like Indiana Jones like, and you have to figure out how to get out of the room and move on to the next room. That would be amazing. Yeah, and I mean, it could be one of those things where it could be set up where there could be a party of people that are together, and they'll be in one room, and it can be timed where once they finish that room, they move on to the next one, and the party right behind them is only a few seconds behind. So it can be designed where it kind of keeps it going, and it could be so big where there could be multiple rooms of the same thing, and that's just kind of where it ends up. Maybe even like the final boss, there are multiple parties that help at the end. Like, it's a giant boss and a giant dome like at the very end, and everyone works together. It's like a giant team thing to help figure out how you can use the environment to help save Link. You just have
to hope that everybody's relatively as smart as each other, or
I think what you have to do is that there's almost no way to lose to the boss at the end. I think maybe, because I think part of the thing is that like it's hard to envision a theme park where you can fail a ride, right? They'll give you the impression.
You definitely need to be able to fail. I feel like you definitely need to be able to fail the escape room, though, right? Like, it's an escape room. If you don't do it fast enough, then you fail. And you can't keep. You have to have a time limit, right? Because you got to keep people moving. So you have to set up in a way where after a max amount of time, you can get more people in.
And it was a cool idea they could do. If there's separate rooms, maybe one room could be based off a forest element, fire element, water element.
Yeah, true.
There you go. They could do something like that, and it could be multiple rooms. And maybe, to your point of seasons, they could change around the rooms, right? Maybe you just do 3 rooms, and then there's a boss. But, maybe at first it's fire, water, forest, but then, in winter it's light, shadow, and spirit or something, where they just kind of cycle them out, and that'd be cool. I think there's a lot they could do there. But let's kind of move on a little bit, because I think there's more Zelda stuff they can do. I think they would have to have like a Malon's milk bar.
Ooh,
it's got to be a Malon's milk bar.
Just a lot of ice cream and different milks, chocolate milk and strawberry milk, and like actually give me milk. Like, I want like legit, like just all kinds of different flavors of milk. So I feel like that's not really a thing that you can get in most places. Like, I want caramel milk.
I think it would have to be like a milkshake place,
Yeah, milkshakes, but like also just like milk.
I mean, if you want it, but I'm just kind of, Also, there should be a Beetle shop, and that's where you can get like merchandise, like souvenirs and stuff.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. There's also got to be an actual Temple of Time where you can go and try and pull the Master Sword.
Oh, yeah.
They gotta have that.
Cool.
They gotta have that. That's gotta be there. I wonder what else they could do. What if they were to have a maze? Like,
When
what
they
if
had actual horses?
maybe
Imagine they just had ponies.
they
A little
ride?
petting area and ponies, and they get pony rides.
It'll have to be like a kiddie like pony ride. I have a hard
Yeah,
time
yeah.
envisioning that they'll have like
I
legitimate
mean, they
full
can
size
do
horses.
full size. Like, you don't need a huge area for a full size horse. Like, I've ridden full size horse in a small little like circle ring.
You
Those are,
could,
like,
but what I'm just
20
getting
feet
at is
diameter.
like, how much sense would it make to have horses? Like they could be horses, but it wouldn't be like you could use them free. And
No, it'd be like there'd be a trainer, and you'd sit on the horse, and you'd go in a couple circles. Because
Yeah, it would be
honestly,
super limited.
99% of people cannot get on a horse and go any kind of speed and not fall off.
yeah, which is
I've been on a horse. It feels like it is actively trying to get you off.
so, and that's kind of where my hesitance is about this idea. Just because if you're gonna have an idea, why just have it be kind of basic when you can kind of go the extra mile? You know what I mean?
I just like horses.
I mean, I
would
love horses
if
too. I
could
just
go
don't
there
see
and
how
just
they could make
get on a
it
horse.
super cool. Like,
And it doesn't need to be super cool. It's horses. Horses
but if
are
you
super
can't
cool.
really use the horses to their full capacity, it's kind of lame. You know what I mean? I don't know.
You don't. It's like being in a small car. It makes everything feel faster. Like being on a horse, it's like being on a bike versus being in a truck. Like you don't have to go that fast to feel like you
know,
are going some speed.
To kind of entertain this idea more, right? What if this idea of there being a horse ranch that's actually complementary to Malon's Milk Bar? So the Milk Bar is actually attached to a little ranch, which is like a petting zoo. You'll have some horses you can ride. There'll be the moo cows, and there'll also be the cuckoos.
You can milk the cows.
There'll be cuckoos.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's this place near me, and anybody who lives relatively close to me, this won't give away where I live necessarily because Houston's big, but Fry's, I think, is the name of the place. It has a petting zoo in the back, and it has horses and cows and chickens, and it'd be just like this. It'd be great. But you can't ride the horses in that though. I want to be able to get on the horse.
Yeah. I think they can do something with that. Looking at some of the comments here, Debus, well, we're gonna get to Xenoblade in a moment, but Debus is saying, I just want a virtual pyro to cook for me. We're gonna, I love that idea. It's actually in my notes, so we're getting to that. Oh, Joycey J, what if a guardian actually chased you? That would be nuts. No, there's got to be a section with guardians. Like, even if it's just like background stuff, just to like see them. Remember how they had that stuff for the Breath of the Wild reveal at E3? They gotta have stuff like that for sure. To at least kind of like just at least a part of the environment to explore. But because the park is interactive, there could be some interaction there, right? Maybe there's like a laser that you can try and dodge, right? And if you dodge it, you get a point or something. You get a piece of a Triforce shard. Maybe there's a Bokoblin camp too. You straight up die. Maybe there's a Bokoblin camp that you can kind of explore as well. Ooh, okay, here's an idea. So there's a Bokoblin camp, right? What if there's a Bokoblin camp and you're actually allowed to touch and use physical objects and to use against these animatronic Bokoblins? Now, they would be objects that wouldn't be like super dangerous. They'd be like very light objects that wouldn't hurt anyone if you chucked it at them, right?
Cool noodles.
Like, yeah, maybe like a styrofoam thing, like stuff like that, but they'd be designed as like things that Link would use against Bokoblins in Breath of the Wild. And the Bokoblins are designed in a way where they react to these objects when you whack them with them. And the idea is simply about like helping to beat a Bokoblin camp. Just an idea.
I feel like that needs a lot of space for something that...
Something, I think maybe just having them in the background, maybe there could be a couple mini games where you could whack one or something, but it's nothing super sophisticated. Maybe something like that. Another idea, though, because I think some sections may need more than just one area to eat food. There could be like a Link's cooking section where you can. It's almost like a buffet kind of where you can collect different items, right? Like insects or stones or whatever, or flowers, herbs, or meat. You can collect these different things around the environment. It'll be like virtual walls, right? And you can bring that over to Link, and he like cooks it, and you can see like the whole cooking mini game there as he cooks up your thing, and it actually makes you real food. Then you eat it.
Be interesting,
right? A little bit of like an interactive sort of like menu that you choose and eat your food. So there's another idea there. We've discussed basically two. There's one roller coaster and there's an escape room. I don't know if they need more. There's so much they could do.
Yeah, I mean, this is a ton they could do. They could do like archery if they wanted to.
Yeah. There's a lot. Like, sheesh. What if they like? Imagine like if they had an area of the park that was just centered around Majora's Mask, right? And it was like Clocktown. Like Clocktown could be a whole section of a park. You know,
Clocktown has a time limit, so escape room ?
We can't make several escape rooms. Like, I think what we've covered is probably a reasonable amount for a Zelda section. You know, one neat thing that I thought of though is that maybe like if they actually design, like you could actually explore Hyrule Castle, and maybe they could even have like a garden maze leading up to the castle. You can actually see a throne room perhaps, but also the roller coaster may go through the entire ride. You can see Hyrule Castle, the fields, all of that, but there could also be Calamity Ganon. Like Calamity Ganon could come out at moments around Hyrule Castle. How do they do that exactly? Stay tuned. I mean, it could be a part of the coaster, right? It could be like something that comes out on rails, and it's like this giant purpley, you know, it looks like Calamity Ganon.
Imagine, this is a ridiculous concept. I don't even know how they would physically pull it off. Imagine if somehow, because you know in the new game they got the sky area, right?
Yeah.
And Universal is limited in space, but not vertically, right? So to expand the area of the park, they just build up, and they have a whole sky realm that has other different things. They could even go have a bunch of Skyward Sword themed stuff up there. And you know, they got the parts on the ground, and then they got the parts in the sky, and boom, double the real estate, baby.
Yeah, they can...
No idea how they build something in the sky without having it just take up all the space on the ground, but you know, that's for them to figure out, not for me.
Yeah, Alex Hugh just said fishing too. They could add fishing. Looking here in the chat.
Yeah.
All the cooks have to be dressed as Link. Man, yeah, they could actually have like cosplay. Like you could dress up as different Links. That's a very interesting idea. And it could be based off, you know, the Hateno Village, the guy who does the painting. You can go into a shop that looks like that, and that's where you kind of pick out different like clothing for that will be like different colors of Link.
Oh yeah.
Right? Divas here said, imagine Hyrule Castle town area with a bunch of arcade type mini games like shooting the rupees and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, so we talk about major stuff, but there could still be a lot of little mini games where shooting rupees, breaking the pots, maybe break the virtual pots. You know, maybe they could have like a bomb shoe alley, like you know how like in Castletown Ocarina of Time they had like that. There was like a place you could enter. There was like shooting bomb shoes at a wall. They could literally do that. It's not hard to do. This is so much potential. It's insane. Also, they could have a Happy Mask Man sales shop where you can buy actual masks.
It's so cool.
Yeah. So much. Hello there, Electro TDS. Thanks for joining. Okay, that's another interesting idea. Amber Abalama says you could have a holographic Hyrule where you ride around in a carousel shooting bomb arrows at Boko camps. That's a whole other interesting idea that, yeah, that's definitely something that would be pretty fun to do. But let's, we are running out of time because, like I said, I have to end things earlier today. There's still some time left, so it's not all over. But I do want to try and touch on some other ideas. So I mentioned how I think it would make the most sense to kind of combine some franchises into particular sections. So I think that the Zelda one could in theory be its own thing, but I think maybe within it they could have a couple extra attractions that'll be referencing other franchises. So one could be for Kid Icarus. There could be simply like a ruin area that looks very Greek-like, and it ends up being for Kid Icarus, right? And it's basically just a ride where you race around, you're given wings and you can fly through what it basically seems like a Kid Icarus Uprising ride, a level.
Right.
And I think it's
I
that
would
simple.
be down with that.
It's that simple. Would it have to be? Should it be interactive? Maybe. But how would it be? You would just shoot arrows. Maybe it's not even like, it doesn't even have to be like a big like ride, right? It could be like a room where it's just kind of like a VR ride, where you're in a VR Kid Icarus thing and you shoot arrows as you fly through and you go for high score. You can't make like an entire section for every single Nintendo franchise, right?
No.
Everything we're talking about right now, if it ever happens, it'll be years from now, just for the record, right?
It's all gonna go alongside the already confirmed Donkey Kong expansion to the park.
Correct.
Keep
Now,
that in mind.
I had some trouble thinking of a Xenoblade attraction, but I felt like there should be something Xenoblade. So one, I think if there's a Xenoblade section, maybe there could be like a little side area where it's like Pyra's cooking and Manana's cooking, so they could both be cooking, given they're from different Xenoblade games. And I think it would have to be some sort of ride that would be sort of like a mishmash of different Xenoblade games. And that may seem like a bad idea, but keep in mind, the whole premise behind the Xenoblade trilogy is that there's these merging worlds, right? Xenoblades 1 and 2 combined to World of 3. So it could be about like a fusion event, right? Maybe it could tell a story of the merging of the worlds of Xenoblade 1 and 2 and 3. And maybe how it starts, it actually starts off like, this is like, it might not even be canon per se, right? It's like a side story idea.
Yeah.
But like for example, you know how in the DLC for Xenoblade 2, and also they added it to 1, where there are these portals you could go into that would be like these like challenge areas, right? And it seemed like it was like a world in between worlds. That's what this could be. Like, so maybe like an orange portal that takes you here, and in this area it leads to some sort of ride where you'll see like the different titans clashing, moving about, and you'll be your own party. And the idea will be to kind of fly through and settle down this fusion event. And it's that simple, but what it will allow is for you to see different elements from the different Xenoblade games. It'll be a fun little ride. And there you go. And we could still have like something to the side where it's Pyra and Manana cooking, which would be really good.
Yeah. Xenoblade is definitely one where I don't like have any ideas right off the bat.
I feel like what I came up with
you
was
could
the best.
adapt that into
And what you would ride would be something like an Ouroboros or a Skell. Like, Xenoblade is like, basically every game has some sort of mech-like thing. You just ride some sort of mech-like thing, and there you go.
Yeah.
I have a hard time thinking of anything else they can do. Like, if they don't do that, they just won't do anything for Xenoblade.
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe it's something smaller. Maybe it could just be like an arcade sort of thing. Well, I'm not sure what you would do.
I don't know.
Yeah. Going beyond that, what else do I have in my notes here? All right, let's talk about the Space City. That's a big one. So I got two more. I got two more things to talk about here. Well, there's a couple more. Actually, a lot more. Anyway, all right. So Space City, basically, it would be a futuristic city that would be a mishmash of maybe Corneria. A city where they have an F-Zero circuit, and there will be also a section that leads you to a Metroid mission.
Right.
So, designed like Corneria, there could be a big dome where we have the Star Fox ride. I think there should be a space bar. Basically, kind of like the space bar we saw in F-Zero GX before Captain Falcon went and did his thing. And this would be something reminiscent to what they do for what they had for Star Wars. So something like that I think they could do. And then also there 100% has to be an actual legitimate F-Zero ride. It's a super fast ride because that's the whole point.
Fast.
I think again, it kind of comes down to
pure, like, ride, just like.
Now the question is, is it a roller coaster or is it a simulated roller coaster?
No, roller coaster. I feel like they'll want to do like a race, like add a racing element or racing with each other. And I don't want, maybe. I mean, that could be cool.
Yeah, you see what I'm saying? Like, how do you?
Yeah. Because what I want is just something like really fast, but they probably gonna want to tie it more to F-Zero than just how it looks.
Yeah.
But I want that sense of speed, right? That's the whole big point.
Maybe it could be
speed.
Maybe you can't really turn, but maybe you could like do the boosts or something. Like, oh, you got boost power, right? Like, and you can like determine when you use the boost, and this can impact the speed at which the ride goes. You know, and how and when you choose to do those boosts, that can impact maybe a little bit of your success in the race. I think it would have to be. Man, it's tough because you wanted to go fast, right? Like if they make it something like a bumper cars almost like thing, then it wouldn't feel quite like F-Zero.
It's too slow,
right? It's tricky. Like, I strongly believe there is a way to do a proper F-Zero attraction, but we kind of have to pick a direction and go with it. You know what I mean?
Right. I do kind of like the bumper car ideas. If they put it on an actual like track and you're like racing, but you're in bumper cars.
I figured it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, I think what you do. I mean, I don't think you can realistically do 30 cars in a race if it's a roller coaster, right? Right. I think you could do maybe 2, maybe 3 or 4, and it's like you pick a vehicle and it's like a high speed roller coaster, and each one's like it's technically a different. You know, remember Dueling Dragons, or like in a Universal they used to have a ride. I don't know if they still do, where it was 2 different dragons. You pick one, and they sort of just like race around each other as a roller coaster.
Okay.
Imagine that, but different vehicles from Zero, and the lead up to it is like getting into like the actual Zero
circuit. They could have interactive things where there's some kind of way to get a boost, maybe by timing something.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is there, because they're in F-Zero, you can go onto different sections of the track to get like I don't know. I've never played F-Zero. I've only played the Mario Kart track that had like.
You know what I think they could do?
Points on those little boost
I think what they could do, they can actually have like an actual arcade, and there will be an F-Zero, like there'll be an F-Zero arcade where you can do the proper F-Zero thing, but there will also be an F-Zero roller coaster, but it'll be almost like a side story where it'll be Captain Falcon trying to save someone or something, and that's what the roller coaster is. And that way you can still get like the high speed actual roller coaster ride, but you can still have this arcade section that actually shows what an F-Zero game is.
Right. And they could have it on a cool simulator setup.
Yeah.
That like moves around.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be dope. Get the best of both worlds.
Yeah. Heck, I mean, maybe they don't even. I mean, I would love for maybe they don't even do the roller coaster. They just have like a decked out like F-Zero arcade machine. Like it could be so like actually maybe that's
like roller coasters.
I like roller coasters. Maybe this makes more sense. I don't know. I like roller coasters too, but like maybe what makes more sense is they just focus on like you get in a cockpit for an F-Zero track, and there's like an actual screen, and you race around, but it actually like moves. It makes you feel like you're in an actual cockpit, actually doing a proper race in F-Zero, and it feels super fast. So basically, it's just like a really well done, embellished arcade machine.
It would work.
honestly, thinking more about it is probably the best way to go about it. You know, it'll feel really cool. It won't technically be a roller coaster, but it'll be something you'll want to do more than once. I'll tell you that. Yeah. You know, especially if the Star Fox one. I just think this is the kind of part there's not going to be a lot of straight up roller coasters, because that's
obviously
it, you know, there'll be a few, but there won't be that many. And then, like, I think currently they don't even really have any roller coasters. Like a Yoshi ride, it's like very slow. So the Donkey Kong one, that's the perfect opportunity to have a true roller coaster, though. The minecart.
Yes, the minecart.
That has to be like a legitimate roller coaster. So I mean, there you go with that one. And maybe you can choose like when you like through barrels or something. I don't know. It's almost like I also kind of feel like sometimes when you have to have like interaction, it's almost limiting you in a certain way. You know?
Yeah, in terms of just like speed and different ways you can move the coaster. Because if you have to interact, you can't just be like throwing people through loops.
Yeah, I mean, if you're on like an intense roller coaster, like you can't really expect people to perform in any sort of crazy way, right? Like,
or really in even like basic ways. Sometimes it's just hard to even like move properly.
Yeah. So, you know, I think maybe for some of them they just don't do that. Now, let's talk about a Metroid ride. We're running out of time, so I want to get all these ideas out, but you know. So, I think for a Metroid ride, what you do is that you go into like some sort of like weird space station that has like a biological element to it too. So it's not just all like space station, but it's also like weird exotic plant life and things like that. And it's like a mishmash of that. So maybe it'll be like kind of like a space frigate. So you know how in Metroid Prime the space frigate actually crashes in its own section in Metroid Prime?
Yes.
So imagine the city, there's a section that's just like a crash landed like spaceship on an exotic looking planet area. You go there, and in it you can see all sorts of crazy things, like, you know, they actually like design like maybe like Talon 4, but there's also like it's Talon 4 growing through a space station. So there's some weird like alien exotic life, there's water, but there's also like broken electricity wires, there's pods, there's all sorts of things that are very, you know, Metroid Prime space like, and you explore that. Now how it's an I'm trying to think of it like how like what like the aesthetic of what you explore would be cool, but how you make it like a ride. Maybe it could be kind of maybe what it could be, right, it's almost like it's a ride. So it is a ride, and there's some sort of like Galactic Federation drone, but it's a large drone, so large that people can ride in it. So you actually are part of the Galactic Federation. You work with the Galactic Federation to help survey and observe what's going on, and maybe offer Samus some support. So you
can be part of the Federation Force,
right? The Federation Force, but they don't name it that. So that's what it is. You're part of the Federation Force assisting Samus, and you fly through. You're put into like these space pods that allow you to fly through this very large, run-down, destroyed space frigate area that's also completely like consumed by alien exotic life and environments. So you're flying around. It's going to be big, right? So you can actually fly around. So it's an actual ride, and that's what you do. You fly around. There'll be sections where you won't see Samus, but it'll be like a story. So at certain moments, you will see Samus like shooting something, moving around, and there's like a story playing at the very end. You'll see Samus fighting maybe something like a parasite queen. It breaks, and then there needs to be an escape sequence where Samus is helping you guys, saving you guys to get out and be free at the end. And then you see Samus fly off with her ship, and there you go. That's the ride. I think it'd be pretty cool.
Be cool. I'm just trying to think.
You may be able to like interact a little bit. Like maybe you can flash lights or scan things as you go through the ride. You don't shoot, That way we don't have another shooter ride, but you can
I feel
light things up
like-
with a flashlight and or scan to get information and observe and record stuff.
So I like this scan thing because I feel like it's perfect for the watch. And I feel like Metroid, I'm trying to think of like what makes Metroid, right? Like what's the main points of Metroid? It's like exploration, like the level design, the backtracking, the way like unlocking new abilities funnels into like the core aspects of Metroid they're hard to fit into a ride. So I feel like it might be better to have some sort of experience instead of a ride where you're just going around, maybe even scanning things for points.
Right.
And doing different things, like just going through an environment and scanning stuff, and maybe there can be enemies that pop up and you gotta shoot them with your hand cannon that they can give you so you feel like Samus. And I feel like it'd be more like a slow thing that you can walk around and do rather than like a fast-paced ride, because I feel like Metroid, like in the actual like, gameplay, Metroid's very slow, very explorative. It's not like a super fast-paced thrill thing.
Yeah, and I think, you know, kind of this idea of it being like some sort of like drone-like thing where you're following Samus around, and you have the opportunity to sort of take your time, observe and scan things. I think that's probably the best way to go about it. And it could be creepy too. It could have like a lot of atmosphere to it. It won't be like it'll be different from most of the park. Looking at the chat here, Diva says you could technically include Xenoblade in the space thing. You could. It kind of goes either way. Maybe like the Xenoblade thing could kind of be like in the middle of the Zelda park and the space park to kind of like smooth over that transition. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now there's another area I thought of, and that could be a Kirby area, right? We're running out of time, so I'm gonna kind of like speed through some of his ideas. But like with a Kirby area, obviously you could easily envision like an actual like food Kirby buffet area. Like it's gonna be a Kirby buffet. Like,
yeah,
there's gonna be a Kirby buffet. There you go.
Oh yeah.
There could also be a Kirby air ride where you ride around on the Warp Star throughout a Kirby world, which would be super cool. And there you go. And I think beyond that, it could just be a section that has like different like Kirby minigame styles, like on walls and things like that. And there you go, Kirby. Now,
yeah, I don't have any big ideas for Kirby.
I could probably get into more detail, but it's just kind of like, for time reasons, I want to get into this final one, which I think is a huge one. There's actually another idea, but I'm gonna get to this one first. So, Pokemon. There's got to be a Pokemon section.
True.
There needs to be a Pokemon section, and there's if Zelda has a ridiculous amount of potential, Pokemon is even more. Pokemon has more potential than maybe even Mario.
Walk around in tall grass, and your watch could like respond and tell you that there's a Pokemon that you can catch.
Absolutely, they could literally have a Safari Zone section where you can explore it openly, and it'll be about, maybe you don't catch them per se, right? But you can interact with them and sort of record Pokedex entries on them. And it's like animatronics, to your point. Like you walk around like this area and there's all sorts of Pokemon to find. There you go. That's it. And
well, I think throughout the park they could just have like a sort of Pokemon Go thing, but like for the park more specifically. Like,
well, the idea would be use your phone the entire time. That would really kill battery. But I mean, they already have the phone interactive with the park.
You just do Pokemon Go.
I think there should be a Lapras water ride.
I think there should be both. They should be animatronic Pokemon. What were you saying? Lapras water ride?
Yep. Lapras water ride. You ride around on Lapras, and it's a ride. There you go. I think there should be like a battle tower, and in this battle tower there could be different like mini games that maybe are related to kind of like battling. So it's almost like kind of like an arcade where you can kind of like build up, and there you go. Maybe there could be gyms within the battle tower, so to kind of give you the semblance of both ideas. And the town could be
have a daily leaderboard, and like everybody can like there'd be like the daily champion. You'd have to try to compete against each other.
And this entire Pokemon area could be like an actual city. So there could be a Pokemon Center, and there could be a Pokemon Mart. So it actually feels like a proper Pokemon. There could be a laboratory as well. That you can explore these different things, and you can interact with them. So they could do all that. They could have a Safari Zone. They could have a Lapras Water Ride. There could be a Pokemon Snap Ride too, where yeah, and that one
Pokemon Snap would work so well.
Yeah, and that could just be. I wonder. I mean, they could do it through animatronics, or they could do it through VR. Both would work.
Yeah.
But yeah, I say VR, but I don't know. It's kind of weird, like because it could be a fusion of AR and VR, right? Like they could give you headsets, right, where you see things in a virtual reality. But I think maybe more like it's kind of
augmented reality is just virtual reality in real life.
Yeah. I mean, Mario Kart the Mario Kart ride has a lot of augmented reality elements, but it's still set within like a physical environment that you explore and see. So it could be a mishmash of that, and you could actually like take pictures of different Pokemon, right? So you could have a Pokemon Snap Ride, you could have a battle tower where there's different mini games regarding battles, and to your point, it's a great idea to have like a score, like an actual leaderboard that you could even see like maybe on a big screen in the middle of the city. There could be a Pokemon museum. That would be really cool, where they could actually like come up with like different like bones and stuff. And so they could be it could be a Pokemon Mart, there could be a Battle City. They could have like 8 different locations. They could each be a badge. You can get a badge from there, and maybe once you get all 8 badges, there could be. I don't know how
each gym could just be different parts of the thing, and they could have like a gym leader you go up to, and you gotta like take him on in a fight. Like imagine if they actually just busted out like cards for this, and they were like, "You gotta do a card battle now, baby." I don't think they do that.
Yeah, I just don't know if they can like. I don't think you can put together a whole team in battle, right? Like that's just it's too much to do in a park when people have to have some level of hope that you can do most of the things in a park in a day and not just the Pokemon stuff, like there's honestly so much potential that they could build an entire Pokemon theme park on its own, centered around this idea.
Yeah.
But there's so much they could do with that. Now, there's one last thing. I feel like we definitely like sort of just kind of scratch the surface of Pokemon stuff, but I feel like we covered it very broadly. Last thing I want to suggest is with all these different Nintendo franchises we're going to be exploring. By the way, somewhere there should be like a Punch-Out arcade thing. Just saying, just as a side piece. And actually, there could be a Switch Sports Fitness section too, where it's all about like different fitness games you can play, and that would just be like a huge like sort of augmented reality game. There you go. The last thing I was going to say is there could be like a Smash area. I have no idea how this will work at all. At all. I would just love to see like a big like Smash castle. You know how like there's like the castle from Smash Brothers? Like imagine like you actually being in there, and it leads to like a Final Destination ride where you see the Master Hand and different Nintendo characters duking it out.
Nintendo has the potential to treat Smash as like the MCU of Nintendo, and they just don't. I feel like the entire park, like imagine if Nintendo treated Smash as like the MCU of Nintendo, and they just had the entire park was just Smash themed. So like they represented all of the like every single franchise, but like in the Smash cinematic universe.
Yeah, that would be cool. Like if they kind of built it around that as like the Smash universe, and that's why all the different things are there. That would be really cool. Yeah, there's just so much potential. So I would love it if you guys who watch, for sure, share more ideas in the comments You know, maybe we'll revisit this concept in the future. But that's kind of it for now, because I have a time limit here because I have to do something really soon. But I'll just kind of check on the chat really briefly here. You have like 30 seconds to put something in the chat if you want me to address it. Checking here, Megaton Menace. For Xenoblade, you could do the Tower of Doom where they drop you from the top, but just have it themed around the world tree. So when I thought about like what they could do for Xenoblade, my issue with it is that which game do you pick, right? And I think you can't pick one, or maybe you do. You know,
I feel like you can't though.
Right? It's too hard to do that. I mean, the easy answer is that they just won't cover Xenoblade ever. Like if they do, it might be like merchandise at a store. That's it. Maybe like a mini game or something. Oh, actually, one neat idea is they could have like a real life gem making mini game. That would be cool. Obviously, that wouldn't really totally cover the world of Xenoblade, but you know, like one awesome idea would be to ride around on Gramps from Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Like that's a perfect idea to have a roller coaster, but it's only covering Xenoblade 2, and that's kind of your issue with that, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's where it's kind of like, I don't know what you do, which is why I thought there should be like a fusion event. My cat is now tangled in my earphone. Thank you. But I think you have to do a fusion event, but that would be so far into the future, right? That at that point, there'd probably be an entirely different series of Xenoblade, or if it's even called Xenoblade anymore, and there'd be a lot more material to draw from. So, and this is Ruby. Say hello to the camera, Ruby. What do you got to say? No, you're good. She's good. She just wants to bite my face. Alright. Careful. And I think that's it, guys. We're done. There is so much we could have talked about, but I feel like we definitely got to a lot of really cool ideas for the evening.
Yeah.
You know, it's just kind of fun to think about all the really amazing things they could do for a Nintendo theme park. And maybe some of his ideas we will see someday.
When we're 60 years old, they'll finally finished all these concepts we're thinking of, and we'll be able to enjoy the best theme park on Earth.
Right? There's just an insane potential. Like, I almost wish I was just a ridiculously rich, like, billionaire.
I was Jeff Bezos, bro.
Right? Like, imagine
Nintendo
if Jeff
park.
Bezos was a Nintendo fan. It's like, hey, listen, I will fund you to expedite the process on the building of this park and let's employ all these ideas now. You know? That would be amazing. But, yeah, that's it for now, guys. Leave a like, it'd be super appreciated. Subscribe if you haven't done so before. And we'll see you all really soon. Take care.
Bye, guys.